seconds and go.
Meeting of Monday, March 15th, 2021 to order. Before we begin this evening, I want to take a moment to remember the life and contributions of our former City Council member, Lorna Smith. Lorna passed away peacefully on Saturday at home, surrounded by her family. Long before University Place was officially a city, Lorna was an active volunteer in efforts to enhance the community she called home. She was instrumental in the city's incorporation effort. She was elected to the first city council in 1995, right after incorporation, and continued to serve on this body until 2009. She served as mayor from 2000 to 2002. In addition, she served on numerous committees and commissions, including the Finance Committee, the Planning Commission, Town Center Steering Group, and the Youth Council. She also represented our community on the Pierce County Regional Council, Pierce County Cities and Towns, the State Route 16 Corridor Study, and the Association of Washington Cities, just to name a few. But Lorna was also a wife, a mother, a grandmother, and even a great-grandmother. Her legacy of service to others lives on in her family members who have been inspired by her energy and selflessness. Her influence impacted many, including many of us sitting on council today. Flags in front of City Hall are flying at half-staff today and tomorrow in honor of Lorna Smith. And I ask you now to join me in a moment of silence to remember this remarkable woman and all she meant to her family, her friends, and her city. Thank you. At this time, may I ask the city clerk to please call the roll?
Yes, Mayor. Councilmember Figueroa.
Councilmember Figueroa present.
Councilmember Keel.
Councilmember Keel present.
Councilmember Pro Tem Lee.
Councilmember Pro Tem Lee present.
Councilmember McCluskey.
Councilmember McCluskey present.
Councilmember Fleming.
Councilmember Fleming here.
Mayor Pro Tem Worthington.
Mayor Pro Tem Worthington here.
Mayor Belisi.
Mayor Belisi here.
Mayor, you have a quorum.
Thank you. We are conducting our meeting this evening remotely in compliance with the Special Open Public Meeting Act rules issued by Governor Inslee's emergency order. Before we begin our meeting, we have a few special rules I want to go over with everyone. First is the participation in public comments. Written comments will continue to be accepted by email. Comments received by the 5:30 p.m. deadline will have been electronically provided to City Council for their consideration. Subject to technological limitations, the Council will also accept telephonic comments. Members from the public can call the number listed on the agenda, 1-509-342-7253, conference ID 544-447-671. For those calling in, please be advised that the calls will be taken in the order it is received. Secondly, for council members, as with our previous remote meetings, we will continue to use the round robin method in the sequence showing in the speaking and voting chart that has been provided to ensure that everyone has a chance to speak. With that, may I ask Council Member Keel to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance, please.
Great, thank you, Mayor. Would you please join me? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Councilmember Keel. At this time, I am calling for a motion to approve the agenda as provided.
Mayor Belisi, this is Mayor Pro Tem Worthington, and I move for the approval of the agenda as provided.
I have a first. Do I have a second?
Councilmember Keel, I second.
I have a first and a second. Are there any objections to the agenda as submitted? Hearing none and seeing none, the approval of the agenda passes unanimously. This evening, the next item on the agenda is our presentation. We had Colonel Derek Finnison from 16th Cab Combat Aviation Brigade Commander that was going to be here this evening to introduce himself not only to council, but also to the rest of the community. We have one phone caller with an unrecognized number on here. Would that happen to be Colonel Finnison? Do we have that, the last four of that phone number by chance? Okay. It's 5786. Okay, hearing no response, I'm going to assume that something happened with Colonel Finnison this evening. Hopefully he comes on board here before we end our presentation section of our agenda. So with that, I am going to move to our next item on the agenda, and that's the service recognition for our deputy, Dan Hacker, and he happens to be here in the city chambers. He is officially retiring at the end of this month, and so we are going to provide him with a service recognition award, following which our Chief Primo will also have a few words to say. So with that, Deputy Dan Hacker, can I call you up here, please? Thank you.
Thank you.
This is a bittersweet moment for me. I have known you as long as we've been a city, and I always enjoy seeing your happy face about when you're driving your vehicle during the day and protecting our citizens. And it's been a pleasure for me to be a person that has attended your public safety briefings that you provide to the citizens. And so it's going to be bittersweet. I'm going to take this moment to read our proclamation in honor of your service. Whereas Dan Hacker has served this community as dedicated deputy sheriff for the Pierce County Sheriff's Department since 1989, he started his service as a corrections deputy, where he worked for 2 years before moving over to the law enforcement side. Deputy Hacker has been working in the city in University Place since 1996. And whereas during his time in patrol, he served as a field training officer for new officers for 27 years, served in the UP Bike Patrol Unit for 19 years, served as a defensive tactics instructor for 14 years, was a member of the SWAT team for 15 years, served as a firearms instructor for 10 years, served as a search and rescue alternate member and coordinator for 3 years, and a sheriff's posse liaison for 6 years. And whereas in addition to his special assignments, Deputy Hacker has devoted his off-duty time to training thousands of University Place citizens over the years in the areas of threat assessment, gun safety, basic self-defense, and emergency planning and preparedness. Many of these course hours were donated time and offered by Deputy Dan as a give back to the community. He has demonstrated through his actions, his understanding that excellent communities cannot exist without excellent public safety partnerships. He has established a reputation as the kind of officer you want in your family was in crisis. And whereas while working in University Place, Dan Hacker had a strict smile and wave creed to treat all people with kindness approach that garnered respect for both victims and suspects in the field. And whereas in addition to working in University Place, Dan Hacker and his wife have lived in University Place for 39 years and raised both their children in the University Place School District, where they have modeled an important example that police officers are part of the communities they serve. They are our fellow neighbors, fellow parishioners, and the parents of our children's friends. And whereas Deputy Dan Hacker has proven this example by volunteering in after-school early release programs offered in Curtis Junior High, provided parking lot safety for large events at the University Place Presbyterian Church, and participated in litter pickup on 67th and Bridgeport with the TRRC. And whereas Dan worked with and trained hundreds of patrol deputies across Pierce County to support the Sheriff's Department's set of core values and has achieved a legacy that promotes a culture of excellence in public safety service. And whereas because of his dedication and commitment to excellence in both his personal and professional life as a protective sheepdog, a 30-year selfless devotion to helping people in their darkest time, the University Place Dan Hacker will be sorely missed by all who have had the pleasure to work with him. And now, therefore, the City of University Place wishes to extend its congratulations and sincere appreciation to Deputy Dan Hacker for his dedication, hard work, and achievement. Proclaimed by the City Council of the City of University Place on March 15th, 2021.
Oh, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Somebody has a great memory, apparently.
And Mayor, while I can't be there, I'd like to take a little screenshot of everybody. If everyone could look at me and smile, and I'm going to take a little snippet. So on the count of 3, hold it, okay? 3, 2, 1, hold. And you are all free to release those smiles. Thank you so much, and congratulations, Dan.
Thank you very much.
And here we also have a special plaque that we are providing to Dan Hacker, as well as a copy of the framed proclamation. And I can't tell you how you are definitely going to be missed by many of us, but we will see you in the grocery store.
Thank you so much, Mayor. And I want to say thank you to you, thank you to the City Council, and thank you to the good law-abiding citizens of University Place for all the support they've given me and our department through all these years. We honestly could not do our job without your support, so we really, really appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and good luck in your future. And with that,
Thank you.
Chief
Thank you
Primo,
very much.
this is yours.
All right. Thank you, Mayor, council members. It's really hard to follow all of that. But I will say Dan will be certainly missed. And I want to thank you for taking the time to recognize his contribution to the city, to the Sheriff's Department, to University Place PD. Dan really does embody so much of what we try to do here at UP PD. As it said in the proclamation, he's been an instructor. He's our go-to person for all the public safety classes. So there's so many citizens that know and recognize Dan for what he does, not just in patrol out on the streets and helping them, but really helping them through classes and helping them be prepared for situations in life and related to keeping them safe. So I just want to say, again, thank you for recognizing him. Thank you, Dan, for all your years of service to this community. You certainly set a really high bar for all the other officers that work with you and that will follow after you. So thank you, Dan, and we'll see you later this week at work. You still got a week to go.
Thank you.
Okay, has Colonel Finnison by chance joined our meeting this evening? No? Okay, I will read our next proclamation in honor of Women's History Month. And where is it? Okay. Whereas throughout our nation's history, women have been pioneers in all areas of society, from the arts and sciences to medicine and public service. And whereas women have significantly influenced public policy and contributed to the building of viable institutions and organizations that continue to support our communities today. And whereas the knowledge, skills, and abilities of women contribute to a more robust workforce and a more prosperous economy. And whereas from championing basic human rights to ensuring access and equal opportunity for all Americans, women have led the way and established a strong and more democratic country. And whereas we remember the great American women who fought for suffrage and advanced our democracy, and the extension of the centennial through the 2021 allows groups, individuals, and institutions to contribute the celebrations that were cut short due to COVID-19 pandemic. And whereas American women have been leaders not only in securing their own rights of suffrage and equal opportunity, but also in the abolitionist movement, emancipation movement, and the industrial labor movement, civil rights movement, peace movement, and more that aim to create a more fair and just society for all. And whereas Women's History Month was first recognized in 1987 by Congress and enacted by the presidents after years of lobbying by the National Women's History Project. Now, therefore, the City Council of the City of University Place do hereby recognize March 2021 as Women's History Month and call this observance to the attention of all our citizens, proclaimed by the City Council of the City of University Place on March 15th, 2021. So thank you. Okay. I understand that Colonel Finnison has finally joined our meeting this evening. So therefore, I would ask Colonel Finnison to please turn on his camera and unmute himself and come on board to introduce yourself to not only our City Council, but also to the community. As our community is aware that we are the 16th Cab and ourselves have a close working relationship, and they have sponsored many things. And every couple of years, we seem to get a new commanding officer. And Colonel Finnison just joined us here this last year. And so it's our opportunity at this time to have him introduce himself. So Colonel Finnison. Oops, are we having some issues with its computer? Colonel Finnison, are you on board? Okay, I would imagine that something must have happened at this time. All right, well, at this point, since we can't seem to get him on board, we may need to reschedule if he doesn't come on before we start our study session today. Our next item on the agenda is our public comment section. As of 5:30 this evening, we had no public submit any emails to us. I don't believe we have any. I see we have somebody from the public and phone number ending in 5786. Did you have a public comment to make? You need to unmute yourself with *6. Phone number 5786. Okay, not hearing.
Hello, can you hear me?
Oh yes, yes, please.
Okay, this is Colonel Finnison. I'm the Phantom 5786 number.
Okay.
So
well, welcome, Colonel Finnison.
So yeah, so I've been listening all along. I guess I was trying to hit the wrong button in order to unmute myself. So I wasn't able to get in on MS Teams, but I was able to dial in. So I'm in on my phone.
Lower the curtain. Sorry, I thought I was on mute. Go ahead, Colonel Finnison.
And so I was able to dial in from the beginning. I just had problems with getting in on my computer on the camera, but I was able to listen in on my phone. So I appreciate you guys having me. So just as you mentioned, about every 2 years, Colonel Brayman was able to stay on about 2.5. But usually about every 2 years, we do get a new commander to the 16th Combat Aviation Brigade. I took over around beginning of July timeframe. And so on behalf of the nearly 3,000 16th Combat Aviation Brigade soldiers that we have here, we just we very much appreciate you guys welcoming us into your city. And we just greatly enjoy being so much of the local community. I appreciate you all inviting me in. So I'll be here until probably around July of 2022, and very look forward to my team and I'll be able to get up to University Place and meet you all in person. You know, hopefully sooner rather than later, we'll be able to be there at the city council meetings in person. But thanks for inviting me. I really appreciate the warm welcome. And again, just look forward to partner with you guys. Anything that we can attend, any events that you want us to be there for, anything like this you want us to dial in. We're again very excited about the opportunity to continue and increase the partnership we have between the 16th Combat Aviation Brigade and University Place. It means a lot to us.
Well, thank you, Colonel Finnison, and I have my fingers crossed that in the near future we will be able to get together in public and be able to have some events and have your troops help participate in those events. So let us all keep our fingers crossed that it happens sooner rather than later. And thank you again for coming this evening. I appreciate it.
Well, absolutely. Thank you for having me. And I'm sorry about the technical difficulties. I'll get better at it next time.
Okay, we will work it out. So thank you again. Okay, the next item on our agenda is our consent agenda. Do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda as submitted?
Mayor Belisi, this is Mayor Pro Tem Worthington, and I move for the approval of the consent agenda as distributed.
I have a first. Do I have a second?
Councilmember Keel, I second.
Okay, I have a first and a second. Are there any objections to approving the consent agenda as submitted? Okay, not seeing or hearing any, the consent agenda passes unanimously. Thank you. Okay, at this time, we have our public hearing and council consideration for an item that was on our previous, at our previous meeting, first meeting in March, and that's the multifamily tax exemption. At this time, I would ask that our staff attorney, Matt Kaiser, come on board to present the staff report for this hearing.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, members of the council. Matt Kaiser, city attorney. Also with me on the line is our Development Services Director, David Swindell, and our senior planner, Kevin Brisky. As the mayor indicated a minute ago, this is the date and time set for a public hearing to consider the expansion of the city's multifamily tax exemption program. This is a required hearing under the provisions of RCW 8414-080. To provide the council and the community some brief context, the multifamily tax exemption program it's authorized by statute, authorized by state law, and it provides for two forms of tax exemption, or two durations of tax exemption, if you will. A tax exemption for 8 years, as well as a tax exemption for 12 years, with the intent, as its name suggests, to promote increased housing opportunities. The city of University Place currently offers only the 8-year exemption. The tax exemptions available to projects within what is known as a residential target area. And that is also defined by statute, which is those areas within certain urban centers. That is to say that those are those areas that have several existing business establishments, adequate public facilities, and a mixture of uses that can include housing, recreation, cultural activities, etc. Since the city initially enacted its local enabling provisions to provide for the multifamily tax exemption, it's only had one residential target area, and that's the town center zone, which it established back in 2013. The legislation before you tonight would propose, among other things, to create a second residential target area, and that includes the Northeast Business Corridor. In order to create a residential target area, in addition to the required hearing, there are certain elements which, within the discretion of the local government, have to be met. It must be within the urban center. It must lack, as determined by the governing authority, sufficient available desire and convenient housing, including affordable housing, to meet the needs of the public who'd likely live in the center. And if you're providing an additional housing opportunity, that enacting the RTA will help the city in achieving one or more goals. As you may recall, this last December, council passed several pieces of legislation that implemented the form-based code. And this area is one of those areas affected by those zoning changes. Part of the genesis for that form-based code was as part of the regional growth center that the city is required to comply with as a result of the Puget Sound Regional Council. The proposed RTA that's in front of you tonight generally contours follows the MUC 110 zone, which was part of that form-based code that council had passed. The legislation in front of you tonight also recommends two other changes to the city's multifamily tax exemption program. The first is that in order for future projects to qualify, it requires a minimum square footprint of the project to be a minimum of 24,000 square feet associated with that project. And secondly, it also requires that the project undergo design review, as contemplated by the form-based code. Both of these requirements are requirements which local governments can add as part of that in a manner that's not otherwise inconsistent with the state law. So to briefly recap, the legislation in front of you tonight does three things. One, it creates the second RTA, the Northeast Business District, and it creates two additional requirements under the code: the expansion of the square footage for any project at 24,000 square feet, and comply with the design review. With that, I'll take a brief pause, catch my breath, and see if Mr. Brisky or Mr. Swindell have anything to add before I turn it back to council, as well as to the public for any required input from the public.
Mr. Brisky and Mr. Swindell are here to answer any questions you might have. Otherwise, we have nothing to add to Mr. Kaiser's presentation.
This is a public hearing, and therefore public comment there's an opportunity for public comment, but as of 5:30 this evening, there were no emails received from the public, nor do we have any public that's currently listening in. So with that, I will close the public hearing portion of this meeting. At this time, may I get a motion for council consideration?
Mayor Bellisi, this is Mayor Pro Tem Worthington, and I move that we move for the approval of the ordinance as presented to council.
Okay, I have a first. Do I have a second?
Councilmember Keel, a second.
Okay, I have a first and a second. At this time, we are open for discussion. So are there any questions or comments at this time regarding this legislation? Councilmember McCluskey.
Thank you, Mayor. I just was pondering the design standards for this tax abatement would include that new road going through the designed multifamily unit complex, and that would be at the developer's expense. And am I correct with that assumption?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, and they complied with all of our design standards.
We are waiting for their submittal. Their submittal and their, how should I say, execution of this project is dependent on this exception. As I think I indicated during the study session, there was a fiscal analysis conducted independently by the city that showed that without this exemption, this project would not be able to move forward. Once this exemption is passed, if it is passed by the City Council tonight, we are confident that the developers will proceed. And one of the first things that they will need to submit is a design standard review. At that time, we will ascertain as to whether they meet our design standards or not. And if there are areas that they do not, we will ask for changes.
Okay, and Mr. Swindell, this says you provided us a revenue assessment estimation for 1 year, and that was at $3.7+ million. And correct. So if we as council decide to go with the tax abatement, what would that cost the city over that term?
I don't have those numbers right in front of me. Kevin, do you happen to have them with you, or Steve?
Yeah, I can have them in front of me here.
Thank you.
Councilmember McCluskey, to your point, I think it's important to put those numbers in. They're also in the council packet for context.
We have 3.7 million, and I didn't see any other, because I thought it was closer to 5 million.
Okay, let me walk you through the numbers in fairly short format. One of the issues that popped up
with that, the ones that you presented to us in the grid.
Okay. Those numbers are 20-year numbers, which are brought down to net present value. And one of the discussion points that popped up in the course of the last study session was council had requested that numbers be run and performed to evaluate the viability of a potential catalyst project. And as Mr. Swindell indicated, we have a potential catalyst project that has identified interest in a project within the proposed RTA. The concern that had been raised by council more specifically dealt with the property tax implications about this. But in order to put those numbers in context, it was also appropriate to run other numbers so you had at least as best of a picture as we could present. And what we tried to do was two things. The first was to identify if we did nothing and we maintain a status quo posture, what would we see? What could we reasonably expect to see over the course of the next 20 years from a revenue projection? And as you may recall, this is a site that has been on the market off and on. And folks can correct me if I'm wrong in this, probably for the better part of the last decade. It has been undeveloped. It meets those requirements necessary for an RTA. It's an area that we've identified for growth. So if it remains status quo, what can you reasonably expect to see over the course of the next 20 years? We know that there's going to be some sales tax and some utility tax associated with that site. There's two or three parcels, depending on how you want to count the old theater. It's the old theater as well as the bowling alley. We know there's going to be some sales tax associated with the bowling alley site, assuming that they're able to reopen post-COVID and whatnot. We also know that the city can expect to see some property tax over the course of the next 20 years in the approximate amount of $220,000 and some water utility tax. But the revenue figure that you see associated that we've projected, if we do nothing over the next 20 years, is in the neighborhood of $664,000 and change. If that site develops and using simply these parcels has a representative example or a catalyst example, we can project a couple things over the course of the next 20 years. We reasonably believe that the assessed valuation of that site will go from under $5 million to somewhere north of $50 million. As a result of that, we also have a basis to believe that we will see increased reoccurring sales tax that will have increased on the neighborhood of 3 to 4 times if it was just simply status quo, a substantial increase in sales tax, as well as the one-time revenues that we talked about. Of particular note, if the site does redevelop and they qualify for the 8-year property tax abatement, even if you take out that 8 years and then look in years 9 through 20, we still expect to see an increase in the property tax. From a status quo perspective of $219,000 and change to somewhere projected to be just under 260 and change. And that's where that $3.7 million, when you aggregate it all up, that you're talking about comes from, if the site is able to redevelop. We also believe that there's additional benefits, particularly from a public safety perspective, which we've tried to capture. We know from what we're getting right now in terms of calls for service, police calls for service, we're just under 60 calls annually. We looked at a couple other apartment complexes, both recent construction as well as apartment complexes in that area. Our forecast is such that we believe that those calls will actually decrease on an annual basis if the site is able to redevelop. But again, these are forecasts. But one of the challenges is what does it look like at the end of the day? And that's something that we don't have the crystal ball, but we do have some good numbers that we think are there. And so that's what we were trying to capture was what does it look like on a 20-year forecast? So I hope that comes back and answers your question, Councilmember McCluskey.
Mm-hmm. And also isn't the developer going to put in around $85 million in improvements to the site, the buildings, roads?
I can answer. Yeah, the developer's estimating about an $80 million investment.
Okay. All right. Thank you. That's all my questions so far. I appreciate the answers. Thank you.
Okay, Councilmember Figueroa, followed by Mayor Pro Tem Worthington and Councilmember Keel. You need to unmute yourself, Councilmember Figueroa.
There we go. Thank you, Mayor. Councilmember Figueroa here. And the question I have is, Matt or whoever, is the abatement discount, for better words, would that start at the beginning? Would it start at the time that the occupancy permit is given, or does it start at the time that they are permitted for the project? For the property taxes.
You want me to take that?
Go for it.
Yeah, Councilmember Figueroa, it starts when they get occupancy, the following year after they get occupancy of the building.
So they would pay property taxes at the full value up until then. So if it takes them 2 years to develop, 4 years or whatever, they will pay the full price of the property taxes until such time.
Correct. The Pierce County assessor goes and reassesses these projects as they're under construction and puts a value on them. So during the construction, they are paying an increased property tax for the structure. And then after they get occupancy starting the following year, then that's when the 8-year exemption starts.
So this particular project, if I remember, or any project, has to have commercial on the first floor, ground floor?
Mr. Swindell, you are muted.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Sorry. When we amended the form-based code, we recognized that there were some areas in the city which were zoned for mixed-use development where it really didn't make sense for that. And we believe that stagnated growth. If you're not on an arterial frontage, if you have no frontage on an arterial street, it's very unlikely that you're going to be able to get any kind of commercial to pencil. So there are standalone apartments allowed now. However, if you are on an arterial street, which is identified within the form-based code as requiring a storefront, then you are required to build to that standard, if you would, on the International Building Code for future commercial use. But commercial use is not a requirement at the get-go.
Correct, but the street that Councilmember McCluskey was talking about, that they will be required to put in, correct?
Correct. It's not identified as a storefront street.
But what kind of a street is it then?
It would be a commercial street. It would be actually a private street. It's not even a public street.
Oh, so it's a private street. It's not a public street.
That's correct.
Okay, that would answer that. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Mayor Pro Tem Worthington, followed by Councilmember Keel and then Councilmember Fleming.
Thank you, Mayor Bellisi. Appreciate that. Let me chat about the numbers here just a little bit, if I could, please, and get that out of my system. So on that performance sheet or comparison that was done in terms of the financial impact, I had a chance, I assume other council members may have had a chance to see this before, and had commented on one of those numbers. And I still hold that my comment while I think staff had a different view, I still want to share that comment with the council. So under one-time revenues, under the proposed redevelopment, there's a fee, we have park impact fees listed at $723,000. And it's likely the project will pay that park impact fee. However, a park impact fee, as we all know on council, is a one-time. It is also not only one time, it actually represents a liability to us. It represents the need for us to invest in our parks in the amount of $723,000 to improve them so that they have the capital capacity, they have the physical capacity to accommodate the new population. In fact, if you go down to the nuts and bolts of how that fee is developed, that's not the full cost. It is half the cost, usually less than half the cost by our own formula. The formula is to take what we estimate the per capita cost is for capital assets divided in our park plan. We can go take a look at that. Cut that number in half because the state says we can't charge the full amount. So to be on the safe side, we only charge half. This shouldn't be seen as a revenue. It is in fact a liability to us. And it's not in the amount of 723, it's in the amount of 1.446,000, if that is our park impact fee, if that calculation is correct. I had suggested we not show this because I don't think it's a revenue, but apparently that isn't shared by all, and that's okay. But I get to at least share my views that we have this overstated in terms of one-time revenues, the amount of 723,000, and probably aren't reflecting and offsetting a further increase in the liability they receive from the project. Now you run the numbers, you look at the bottom line, it's still positive. It doesn't change the outcome from as far as do we or don't we net ahead, but with this tax abatement, we do still net ahead. But it isn't quite as large. It is, as I said, in my view, different. Now we all get to have opinions. You've heard mine. I wanted to share that. I had shared it with the staff earlier, and felt as though I needed to share it with you. More about the project and the detail, more about this opportunity or the issue that we have in front of us, expanding this area for tax abatement. And this is one of our focused areas that's key to our future development. At our last meeting, I referred to this sort of as considering a very special power that we have. I think I used the term our superpower. And it's because we don't have it. We don't have very many things we get to use as an incentive for projects or things that we think are important in the community. Here we have a physical investment that can change the character of that area. And it does represent a new future for us. And it's an area that we have in our zoning and our planning processes and the comprehensive plan we have emphasized. And we've said we need this to get going. And here's an opportunity to jumpstart that process. And I want to be clear too, we haven't talked about it much, but sometimes this is viewed as some sort of handout to the development, to the developer. And it is not that in my view. Also in terms of my opinion, it is rather more of a transactional issue. You put this where we want it, you design it the way that we say we want it to be designed, and there is a tax rebate for you in it, or a tax deduction in this particular case, for a limited period of time. And that's really what it is, in my view. It is not a handout. It is instead a way for this transaction to move forward, because without this tax savings for the property owner, the developer, the fact is they can't build what it is, or won't have the financial incentives to build what it is that we think is necessary for this to reach its highest value to our community. And so this offset is how we get there. We've looked at this. I have not I've not seen the details of the design, but I have I understood from staff that they have reviewed it, and as the project has changed over time, they have come to appreciate that it meets those it meets good design guidelines, and I have faith in that their opinion about such things. In any case, I wanted to share my opinion on a couple sides of this and look forward to more conversation as the opportunity comes forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. Councilmember Keel, followed by Stan Fleming, Councilmember Stan Fleming.
Great. Thank you, Mayor. And thank you, staff, for your report. The first question I have is, that piece of property, is it just covering where the theater is, or is it beyond that? I mean, what's the footprint of the area that we're talking about right now?
Are you referring to the entirety of the proposed RTA, Councilmember Kill?
No, I think I can see the RTA. I can see that's from 19th down to what it is. That I saw. I'm just talking about what the developer, the piece that we're talking about as far as this project's concerned.
It's depicted on the map. Attached has proposed Exhibit B to the ordinance, has effectively 3 parcels with 22nd running through the middle of it. I don't know if it'd be easier for me to share my screen and do the mouse over, if I'm easier to describe it.
I'm looking at the map now and I see 22nd running through it. So can you just kind of talk me through it?
Yeah, so if you can see just south of 22nd, if you can see what appears to be the theater has carved off as its own parcel, there's a lot surrounding that, running all the way out to Mildred.
Go ahead and show the slide, please.
Yeah, I got you all on my half screen.
Yeah, Matt has the slowest computer in the world. Oh, you got it. Okay, there you go.
Hopefully you can see the hand moving around. So we're referring to this parcel and right here.
Okay. That's good. So, and the other conversations we've had about developing in that area, those parcels had multiple different owners. So is that still the case, or is that all one owner, or is that multiple owners on current owners on those properties?
Currently multiple owners.
Okay, good. All right, well, I could, just from my perspective, I think that's a big win for the city. As we have tried to develop that area, as we all know, for many times, and a lot of it had to do with getting those owners to agree to sell it in a certain way and kind of work together. And so that we have that, I think it's good. Long term, it's going to be a win for the city, because now we have that part developed, and even beyond the time that this abatement is doing, as soon as the abatement's over, we're going to start collecting those tax revenues that will go well into the future. Today we have nothing, and nothing is going well into the future, and so we need to I think long term on this, and so I'm excited about what this will offer us as a city going forward, both from the long term of the tax and also the long term from the development of our city, and continue on that whole thing. And as you guys know, it just takes one person, somebody to do something in an area, and that draws attention. And my hope is that those other parcels that we see around there, particularly going out to going north all the way to 19th, we've got some good opportunity, beyond that last north piece that's being developed, for opportunity there for development as well. And then the last piece that I'd say about that, we know coming to that corner in the 2025, 2030 area is light rail with Sound Transit, which is going to have all kinds of development happening there at that one point. So I'm happy that we're getting our oar in the water, and that we're able to actually showcase what the city on our side of 19th can do. The other thing that's happening there, is, as you all know too, is that Tacoma Housing Authority has bought that property, and they're scheduled to redevelop over there where the Fred Meyer is in that area as well. So there's a lot of work going on over the next few years on that corner and on those four corners. And I'm glad that we're in the process of making that happen. So thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councilmember Keel. Councilmember Fleming.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. You know, I share the excitement, if that's what we call for the opportunity and the prospect to develop that area. I just have a couple of quick questions going into that. First of all, Matt, I've heard a 8-year abatement and I've heard 20-year abatement. Which one are we looking at for this?
We're looking at the 8-year abatement. State law currently also allows a 12. University Place has not authorized the 12. The 12 requires an affordable housing component. The legislature is considering a 20.
Okay, so with the 8-year abatement, when I had asked for, and I have yet to see the city's plan to cover the expenses for the city's budget, as we remove this property out of the taxation for that period of time. Do we have a game plan to cover those expenses during the time of the abatement?
Which expenses are you referring to? The transportation?
I'm just talking about costs. When we look at the overall city budget, we look at all the taxations, all the fees, everything that goes into that. This property, contrary to what was said, doesn't bring anything to the city. It currently brings about $500,000, I understand, in taxes to the city that we're going to set aside with the goal of collecting more down the road, which will make up for that 8 years of abatement. But we still got the expenses that as a city we have to pay. So we'll have a gap there. Do we have a game plan to cover that gap until those other taxes in the future start to roll in?
The one tax that gets abated, and it's the only tax that gets abated, is the property tax. The other taxes, such as sales tax, in terms of the new housing units, that does not get abated. The utility tax that would be collected from those are not subject to abatement. The one-time revenues that are set to come in, as their name suggests, they're not one-time revenues, or they are one-time revenues. They are not subject to abatement. So the only property tax, or the only tax that is subject to abatement, is the 8 years of property tax.
Okay, so with those other taxes, that offsets that 8 years, so it's pretty much zero. Is that fair?
I think that's fair.
Okay. You know, the other thing, you know, Councilmember Figueroa raised an interesting point, and that was with the commercial development in the area. You know, to me, transparency is extremely important. And, you know, when we had the conversation back when we were doing the form-based code, looking through my notes, the question did come up is, does this change anything substantial in the city? And the answer was no. And now we're looking at a project in which there will be no commercial development or any commercial added to it. It's going to be all apartments. So, you know, I just think it's important when the council is debating issues, and this is just more of a comment than a question, that everyone is transparent in what we're telling one another, so that when we're stovepiping the conversations, that we can put those pieces together. You know, it's not that the council is going to oppose something. We just need to have a good understanding of what we're buying into at the time we're doing things. So while I do believe this is going to be a benefit to the city, I'm disappointed that we didn't have the full picture of it going into it. So that's just my comment for what it's worth. And then, Matt, you made an interesting comment. You said that with more apartments, we'll have less police call. I'm going to hold you to that because I've never, and I've done this for a long, long time. I have never, and you never use definitives in conversation, but I have never seen police calls go down with the increased number of apartments. So if this happens, it'll be a first, and you can prove me wrong, and I'll tell you I was wrong when that happens.
And I'm telling you, that's what our forecasting showed. So
I think the forecast is way off.
We'll compare notes.
Agree.
For what it's worth. I don't know who's forecasting, but I hope they're not drinking too much of that Kool-Aid. So with that said, I'll yield. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Okay. I noticed Councilmember Figueroa, did you raise your hand again with another comment?
Yes, I did. Thank you, Mayor. I do have several, but just on the note of the law enforcement, which is gets into, I do agree. I don't know who's forecasting this, but there's just no way with that many more people coming in that the law enforcement will be the same or reduced. Just so, and I don't have to be an expert to figure that out. All due respect, but back to Councilmember Fleming's comments about the gap of revenue. I'm not sure if we're all following what he's saying, but and I think I believe that we have to dig deeper into this, and that is the gap. I understand that the revenue lost of property taxes during that abatement could be, maybe made up by the sales revenue, utility revenue, franchise revenues, whatever. But remember that we have an ordinance that says all property taxes goes into law enforcement, and that's what pays law enforcement, because everything else that we have going in our city is paid by our sales tax. We use that up. So unless we say, and this is a big deal. I mean, it's $500,000, a year, or even more, because property taxes increase. Is even if there's nothing there, are we going to then say the first, as a council, the first 500,000 or whatever the property taxes should have been that comes in sales taxes and utility taxes shall be put into law enforcement, or not? Because if we don't, then we're going to be short. Okay, we have unless there's some other calculations that I didn't see, the calculations for law enforcement includes this property tax, and it wasn't taken out in that calculation. So if it continues to be there and it's going to be taken out, again, we haven't made a decision how to fill that gap. Could we, maybe? It's not, I'm not willing to throw roll the dice on that. Something is incomplete business thought here. Okay, so that's one. Number two is if we do this and there's no promise or guarantee from this developer that they're going to actually build, okay, this and I would assume that this project is so big that it's taking up the maximum height and the maximum footprint it can. But what about if at the last second says, well, nah, we just want to do half of this. We don't really want to do this. We're doing this. I'm consciously thinking about doing this. I'm not bought in 100% by any means. That this could bring in the maximum leverage for the future. But if it's half of that, then there isn't as much leverage as and bang for the buck anymore. And that's troublesome because there's no guarantee. There's nothing in there that says they're going to show up and build what they said they're going to build, because there's nothing on the table yet. So I have a huge issue with that. And then if they don't and they disappear and somebody comes in and says, well, I guess I can have an abatement for doing, a third of that project. So we got a lot of unanswered questions here and thought processes. Another one is, the housing market. Yes, there's a lot of the cost and increase of building, but this is a solid 100% housing. do you realize that housing is one of the best investments, and in Pierce County is predicted to be one of the highest for a long time? And it is paying off really, really, really good. So I have a hard time with that. This is going to that the performance won't work to the degree that need this many years, and we don't have any guarantee that they're going to do that. And my last comment on that is, why don't we ask for the private street to be what do you call it, turn over to the city and make it into the public street so that we can have the commercial there and have a public street. Remember, we went through $55 million in debt to redo our town center so that we can get sales tax, because we only have so much of a footprint in University Place for commercial. And this is an opportunity to negotiate, especially since we're giving away so much money, to have them give that street to the public and have them have a commercial, especially if we're talking about this Four Corners, we're talking about the growth. We could use some more commercial there. So those are the thoughts that I have, council members. And some of that is somewhat of mostly it's comments for food for thought. And some of that is questions that Matt needs to answer.
Okay, I will turn this over to our attorney, Matt Kaiser, to respond to your comments.
Yeah, I'm trying to discern at what point the conversation has gone from questions into council conversation. So I'm trying to pull a couple questions out of there.
Okay.
So here's at the end of the day, the one thing that I think we can generally agree on is none of us have a crystal ball in terms of what the future is necessarily going to hold. But what we do know is that this is an area that the city has identified for potential residential redevelopment or redevelopment period. It's been the focus of the recent form-based code. You have tasked your planning commission to come back by the end of the year with site-specific recommendation or area-specific recommendations on how to incentivize this particular area. We also know that this particular site of focus has been sitting largely dormant for the last 10 plus years. So you find yourself at that proverbial crossroad. Do you stick with the status quo, or are you willing to continue with the progress that you have already made with the form-based code, with tasking your planning commission, and so forth? We have been identified with a potential catalyst that we have worked a number of assumptions around. And you're right, they are assumptions. But we also have reason to believe that they're reasonable assumptions. And we can argue over whether it's police calls or this number or that number, or these are the tax revenues or those, and so forth. But the bottom line is we don't know, because we don't have that. But what you do have, and I think Council and Mayor Pro Tem may have said it best earlier, is that this is one of the big tools you have in the toolbox, where you have the ability to open up the playbook, as it were, to incentivize a particular area. And when that opportunity presents itself, it's necessarily incumbent to say, Council, here's the option. And that's what we've done for you tonight. And at the end of the day, you're going to be asked to cast a vote on an ordinance. We think it's a pretty good ordinance, but it also recognizes, just like when you pass the form-based code, you don't know what the form-based code is going to look like. We think we've gotten it pretty teed up. That took a lot of work putting it into. This is no different, but it's a continuation of the steps that you have already taken.
Okay. Thank you very much, Mr. Kaiser. Councilmember Pro Tem Lee, you raised your hands.
Yes, I have one question. I guess, Matt, just to clarify something. So apparently the developer hasn't bought in completely to the form-based code, or hasn't at least provided description of how they're going to make this project look. Are there any other items that would be considered a monkey wrench in this, such as sewers? Or is there something else that would cause them not to proceed with what you have discussed with them?
I'll defer to Mr. Brisky or Swindell because they've had closer contact.
I can answer at least to they have reviewed our form-based code and our design standards, and they are confident they can comply with those. And their preliminary drawings, we feel, are very much in the right direction for layout and so forth. And they're currently looking at utilities and sewer and whatnot, and they've had conversations with Pierce County, and so we don't foresee any monkey wrenches at this point that will come up. Sewers are there, utilities are there. And one other thing I just wanted to clarify on the exemption, remember it only applies to the structure and not the land. So they still, the property is still paying on the value of the land. And if you look at the assessed value out there now, all the values in the land. The structures have a pretty small value on them overall. The land value is 3.8 million and the structure value is 1.1 million. When the land gets redeveloped and gets reassessed, very likely that land value is gonna lift up even more to offset any of that overall. So I just wanted to clarify that it's not just a zero going in there. There still is on the land. And on the streets, real quick, they will be, the developer has the option to dedicate those streets that we're requiring, or they can remain as private property, but they will have to have a public easement over them. So they will still act as a public access way. And for all intents and purposes, if you were driving it, you wouldn't know if it was within a public easement or a public right of way. So
sewers aren't an issue then?
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
I do have a quick question on this process, whether it is this project or any other project. I understand they haven't done final permit submittal, correct?
That's correct.
And at the time a project has a final submittal, are they vested in what the current regulations are at that time? In this case, there's a project that is underway. If they were to do their final permit submittal before we approve this legislation, would this legislation apply to that project or what is currently on the books?
Currently, they have not applied for a building permit, which would have the effect of vesting under the land use regulations in place at the time they submitted a complete building permit. We do not anticipate that they plan to apply for a building permit prior to this action.
Okay, that was basically my point of clarification here. There's discussion underway, and because this potential litigation or this potential legislation could impact this project, they have not taken that next step to finalize their permit application, pending what the outcome of this is. And I want to thank Mr. Brisky for clarifying my second question, which was the property tax, that they still will owe property tax on the land and not on the structure. And that is what this legislation is about. And just for my personal comment, here we have a project that is nicely centered around the transit system that is at 19th and Mildred, with the future of the sound transit potentially coming out here. So we are really nicely vested in being able to provide maximum densification in an area that has the least amount of impact on our residential neighborhoods, because the area up there is basically commercial and apartments. So I'm excited to see that project or that area getting redeveloped, whether it's a project that is in the works or some other project that might come through for that northeast area of University Place. We have been working for quite some time trying to figure out how to get the multiple landowners there to come into agreement on a project. And this one looks like it fulfills all our objectives and will be an example project to to our form-based code that we've worked so hard at and stuff. So I'm looking forward to supporting this as we move forward. Councilmember Keel, followed by Councilmember Fleming, and then Mayor Pro Tem Worthington.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. I mean, we're tracking. I agree 100% with your comments there about what's future. The other thing that I wanted to say about that Four Corners area is that I know that once transit comes to that area, I know that Sound Transit is also looking for a place to put a maintenance yard, and I've been in several meetings where, gee, that place, there's nothing, there's light open space right there at 19th in UP, and they're part of the group, and UP is that we could put the maintenance yard there. And so if that is allowed to happen, we get zero as far as tax from that. And whatever we're getting now would be less than that, and it'd be an eyesore. And so I would just encourage us, again, to get our oar in the water, to develop this so that we have a better way to fight eminent domain by the 800-pound gorilla that's going to come through here later on. So, that's just an added to all the other benefits that I see to what our efforts so far is in that area. Thanks, Mayor.
Thank you. Councilmember Fleming, followed by Mayor Pro Tem Worthington.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Maybe I'm very selfish about our city, but I would challenge anyone to try to throw eminent domain at our city with our council. But be that as it may, this question's more for David and for Kevin, and that is we're looking at one project in that area. And Matt, if I recall the map you showed us earlier, there's other projects that are slated around that project in other parcels or lots. Do we have plans? Are we entertaining? Do we expect, project that in those other projects we are going to eliminate the commercial component also?
Currently, the street frontage of Mildred and 19th are required to be the storefront overlay that we talked about in the form-based code. So while they won't be required to occupy with commercial initially, they're required to build to commercial standard so that when commercial is a commercial opportunity comes, the building code requirements will be satisfied for those frontages. Currently, those are very valuable commercial frontages, and we have confidence that they will, in fact, develop or redevelop for commercial uses. There are no proposals on the table currently for those frontages.
So Dave, I hate to read between lines or pretend I'm reading between lines or trying to decipher code of what you just said, but if I'm wrong, just correct me. But the requirement would be to build for commercial, but you don't have to have commercial, which means it could be anything else under the sun. Is that fair?
Anything under the sun that's permitted in that zone. So there's certain types of incompatible uses that we would not allow. But generally retail, office space, that sort of thing would be allowed in those areas. And in the interim, things in the order, if they were to build multifamily, they could use the bottom floor as their offices, as common area.
Okay, so I think it's important again for council to know. And again, goes back to my earlier comment about transparency as we as a city and we as a council are debating these issues. It's important for council to understand there will be no commercial in that area once that area is developed. And if we're okay with that, that's okay. But there will be no commercial as we know it there today. And then that's what I needed to hear, and that's what the council just needs to be cognizant of. So as we are having these conversations about allowing development and supporting the density and supporting transit in that area, we are going against our own policies to accommodate that, to eliminate commercial business. And again, there's 7 people here with 7 opinions, and if we're okay with that, we're okay with that. So that's the point I wanted to make. So thank you.
Mayor Pro Tem Worthington.
Thank you, Mayor Bellisi. Mayor Pro Tem Worthington here. Councilmember Fleming, and thank you for pointing out and helping us kind of emphasize the issue of the commercial opportunity here will be gone. It's, you know, it's either going to be this project in which has no commercial or perhaps something else in the future. But if this project, it's not commercial, and it's important that we recognize that. You had also asked earlier about the map, and looking at that map, I had a similar question as well. My recollection is, given the 24,000 square foot minimum size, structure size, it's hard to envision, what my takeaway was, it was hard to envision that structure being on any of the remaining parcels, at least as we think about them. Now, people can reconfigure, things get torn down, in time, perhaps it could happen. But it isn't readily apparent, or are there other near-term likely candidate parcels? And that's a question to staff. Mm-hmm.
I mean, I don't feel there are anything immediate that would qualify. There hasn't been, we haven't fielded any phone calls or seen any interest or seen any listings on the market in that map area. And as you pointed out, the rest of the areas are all developed and mostly occupied. So I wouldn't foresee anything in the near future. And as you pointed out, Councilman Worthington, or Mayor Pro Tem Worthington, is that you would probably have to combine or get some larger pieces together to be able to field a project larger to work. So I do feel that with the north-south road they're proposing, there might be some this is me speculating a little bit, but I would see some possibility for some redevelopment along Mildred on those parcels. I think this could be a catalyst for that to occur. I still think that's a ways down the line, though. And those would be the ones with the commercial ground floor storefront requirement.
For example, the Wendy's has just completed a new remodel. Mm-hmm. Got it all done. The owner was ill for some time, and it took a long time to get finalized, but was just recently finalized. So the Wendy's has been redeveloped, and the old Keg restaurant has recently been converted to a imaging office with a major remodel there. So we really don't anticipate that property redeveloping. We've talked to a new property owner for Narrows Plaza. They have indicated no interest in redeveloping that. Hopefully we will see them doing some remodeling in order to make that a more attractive center. And as far as the old shopping center there at 19th and Mildred, we've talked to that property owner, and he has expressed that he has no interest in doing anything at his age.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And so in terms of the near term, this is the foreseeable project that this would have actually applied to.
That's correct.
In the future, things can happen and the unknown does pop up, but we're all hearing that's not likely at this point. Okay. No, thank you. That's, I think, the only other thing I wanted to add. Appreciate a chance to comment.
Okay, we've had a real robust conversation here. We are a bit behind on our conversation, on our schedule here. I did see Councilmember Figueroa raise his hand. Do you have a quick comment or question, sir?
Yes, I do. Thank you, Mayor. Matt, or it could be one of the other staff members, but you mentioned that the the private street will be given a public easement, correct? Did I hear that correctly? So we'll acquire an easement on this right of way for public use. At that point, wouldn't you consider that a public road for all practical purposes as an easement, which would be perpetual? And wouldn't that then require it to have commercial on the first floor?
The easement will provide access. It will not require the city to do any maintenance. And currently, the form-based code has this storefront overlay that I had introduced the city council to during the form-based code formation, but more recently we talked about tonight.
So the public easement, you're saying we wouldn't have any obligations at all for cleanup or snow removal, ice salting of the road since it's for public use? Because the easement, I like to see the easement, because usually an easement, if they're giving us an easement for the public, for anyone to be able to go in, egress and ingress, you're saying that is specifically, there's verbiage in there that says that the city is not obligated for anything on that road.
The easement has not been drawn up.
Well, I didn't assume so, but I'm trying to figure out what this staff administration is going to negotiate as an easement, if it's going to be dedicated as an easement, because that makes a big difference if this is considered commercial or a public road or not.
It is not anything that we're looking for a dedication for.
No, but I'm not saying dedication is a vague word. Dedication for ownership or dedication as an easement. We know what an easement is. It's basically ownership. Is that an easement is an ownership in its own right. So again,
is an interest. It's not an ownership.
No, I know it is an ownership though. It's an ownership of an interest of a road. So again, that is just a term, and the devil is in the details. I'd like to know that this administration is going to, in this so-called assumed easement, that you're telling this council that you're going to include in that easement and be brought to us. I think it has to come back to us, that it would have no obligations for us whatsoever.
Duly noted.
Would you make sure that's on the record, Mayor?
Yes. Any other comments or questions at this time? Okay, not hearing any, may I call on the city clerk to conduct a roll call vote, please?
Councilmember Figueroa,
Oppose?
Councilmember Keel,
Aye. Councilmember Keel, aye.
Councilmember Pro Tem Lee,
Councilmember Pro Tem Lee, aye.
Councilmember McCluskey,
Councilmember McCluskey, aye.
Councilmember Fleming,
Councilmember Fleming, aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Worthington,
Mayor Pro Tem Worthington, aye.
Mayor Bellisi.
Mayor Bellisi, aye.
The motion passes 6-1, Mayor.
Thank you. At this time, we're on our next item on the agenda, our city manager and council comments and report outs. May I ask our city manager, Steve Sugg, to come on camera, please. Mr. Sugg.
Thank you, Mayor and members of the council. Tomorrow, March 16th, is going to be University Place's first mobile vaccination clinic. The registration was opened on Friday, but due to popularity, it was closed quickly. Within an hour, the slots were filled. It's going to be located tomorrow in Windmill Village parking lot, the same place where Department of Emergency Management had done their testing this summer over in fall. So if all goes well tomorrow, we are working with Pierce County Department of Emergency Management, a vaccination outreach specialist to, help get more personal assistance and access for those individuals that struggle with or have no technology access. So stay tuned. We're as the vaccination continues to occur, more vaccine becomes available throughout the county. So this is exciting, is that it's the first clinic that we're going to have here. And then furthermore, on vaccinations, starting on March 17th, so 2 days away, everyone in Tier 2, and refer to the, if you go to the, for folks listening to this broadcast, covidvaccinewa.org. That's covidvaccinewa.org. That has all the charts and graphs that explains what the various tiers are. So starting on March 17th, everyone in Tier 2 will be eligible for the vaccine. And also, Governor Inslee held a press conference last Thursday, March 11th, and he announced that on March 22nd, all counties will be eligible to move forward to phase 3. That would allow capacity to be increased to 50% for all indoor activities and outdoor activities, and that includes up to 400 people, high school graduations, concerts, whichever is lower. Again, the details are on covidvaccinewa.org. The state will review the progress of each county every 3 weeks. The first review is coming up on April the 12th. So we anticipate, Governor anticipates that outdoor sporting events will be open to 25% capacity. They may increase that capacity limits in mid-April. Again, lots of information there. Again, covidvaccinewa.org. I won't go through it all. Just a quick note. With all of this potential opening to phase 3, everyone needs to be aware that mask and social distancing will still be required. It's just that they're going to, things are going to start to open up more, but open up with the safety provisions in place. Mayor and Council, that's my report. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Sugg. At this time, we're open for council comments and reports. I will go through the list. Councilmember Figueroa, do you have any comments or report outs at this time?
Councilmember Figueroa does not have any comments. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Keel, any comments or report outs?
Thank you, Mayor. I have 2 reports today. The first report is with Pierce Transit. Some of you may know that our current CEO, Sue Dreyer, has announced her retirement. And I am now on a subcommittee of the Pierce Transit Board search committee for a new CEO for Pierce Transit. We have retained Karras and Associates as our search firm. We've met with them with their initial meeting, and we're pulling together now all the documents and criteria for a new CEO for Pierce Transit. So I would just say, if anyone's out there interested in a great opportunity, brush off your resume. But also, I think that I just want to let us all know, both our city and the city of Furquest, know that we're in the throes of searching for a new CEO. The second thing that I want to mention is has to do with Sound Transit. As I've been reporting, that agency is in the midst of filling the gap of an $11 billion, yes, I did say billion, $11 billion gap in our programs, mainly due to COVID, as well as and all the revenue, the sales tax revenue that fell short during COVID. I am leading, as you know, as the chair of that group. I'm having some very serious conversations with my colleagues 3 county executives and, some 14 other mayors and council members in the 3 counties, figuring out how we're going to restructure our program list so that it becomes affordable and that we allow flexibility for as monies come back into the plan over the years, we're able to start up these new projects. And so it's a dance between holding on some and keeping others what we're calling shovel ready, so that when dollars do come in, we can just hit the ground running, so to speak, with that. So that's taken a lot of my time. And in July of this month, we plan to actually have a new presentation of the realigned projects that we're going to be moving forward. So the last thing I anticipate that what we think of as projects and where those timelines are right now, I anticipate in some of those there will be a 2 to 5 year delay in some of those projects going forward, just based on the dollars that we have right now. That's my report.
Thank you, Councilmember Keough. Councilmember Pro Tem Lee, do you have any comments or report outs at this time?
This is Councilmember Pro Tem Lee. I have no comments. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember McCluskey, any comments or report outs?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. I have a couple. One is that I attended the Zoo Trek Authority Board meeting that occurred last Wednesday, and they had showed their revenues and expenses, and their revenues are well above their expectations and their expenditures as well. So they are still in COVID recovery mode, but they are very thankful of the position that they are at this point in time, because they're expecting COVID to have more of a hit than it actually is demonstrating. They are continuing along with their vision of safety, equity, accessibility, guest comfort, as well as the financial viability with conservative outcomes. They had made some assumptions with some of the things that are going forward with COVID that they will are looking forward to keeping post-COVID. And one of them they're looking at is a time ticketing, because they have discovered that the attendance is still above some of their current attendance at this point in time. So that was an outcome that surprised them. And it also established greater guest experiences due to the time entries. So there isn't any mass gatherings at different places. The flow is better. Wild Drive at Trek looks like that probably will go forward, as well as the extended summer and virtual camps that they're doing. And they're also noting that a lot of the virtual camps are going global, worldwide, which was a nice surprise to see as well. In the phase 3, they're ramping up for the 50% capacity and getting prepared for that. And also they want to thank the Pierce County residents for their purchases through online, because that has helped them immensely, as it has our city. The Sumatran Tiger is coming back. It was born at the zoo. It left for a little while, and it's coming back. And so everyone's excited to see the return, and hopefully it gets friendly with its other companion that is there, so that they can have more Sumatran tigers. The 3-banded armadillo was introduced to his new partner, and so they're hopeful that there could be babies in the future there as well. And Camadilla is pregnant, so they're excited for a little newcomer to come on board really soon. And also the camel rides, unfortunately, will be going away. They didn't seem to fit in with the vision of the zoo going forward, as you know, our elephants are going away as well. But the camel rides are going to be, that area there is all going to be redesigned to what they call the Little Explorers Nature Play Garden. So they'll learn about birds, bugs, along with playing and getting some tactile experiences. And it's also going to be coupled with a pollinator play area as well. So the South Pacific Aquarium is set to be drained in late fall of 2021. So they're preparing for that renovation by taking care of the animals or the marine life that is in the aquarium currently, to make sure that they are safe and healthy, for hopefully a return to maybe a new and improved aquarium, depending upon if the citizens of Pierce County will vote for a bond to do that. So they're in once it's drained out, they're going to do an assessment of the structure, and then establish a design phase, and that will go out for public comment. The Northwest Trek is due to get the first series of their trams from Portugal. The first one will arrive in April, but they won't be set to go because due to COVID as well, the tram stations are in project delay. And so, but they're going to acquire the trams, and then once the stations are up and running, then the trams will go. It will have a huge skylight. It will have expanded windows. The windows will be able to go up and down, so that they'll have the indoor-outdoor feel of a tram ride, and they're pretty darn cute looking as well, I have to say. Really designed. And then this year they're also preparing for their accreditation that's going to happen in 2021. And so that is always a big deal. And the zoo and Trek have always fared extremely well on the accreditation. So I expect them to do the same this year. And with that, the second part of my comments today is Councilmember Pro Tem Lee and I have been working on a coyote issue that's been happening in certain areas of our city. But we have been privy to some emails from a few citizens really concerned about what is the city going to do in regards to the coyote issues that have evolving with our urban wildlife. And so you'll note in the headliners that there is an article that will come out to alert the citizens on what they can do and what is feasible to do, and how they can reasonably behave when they encounter the urban wildlife. And what is really interesting is, as Councilmember Lee and I have been investigating and researching the coyotes, that there is a benefit to having coyotes in the urban environment, which they keep down rodents, rats, mice. You know, as long as the humans do not feed them, they are more encouraged to go after the other nuisance pests that we have. And so it aligned in that headliner, courtesy of Gary Cooper, who helped our public works director, has helped design that article. There is a link that will provide additional information from the Fish and Wildlife that I thought was very fascinating. And during also the research studies in the Discovery, Chicago, the Windy City of Chicago, has an urban wildlife coyote issue that they're managing pretty much in the same way. And so with that, I'll close my comments, and thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Councilmember Stan Fleming, do you have a comment or question or report out at this time?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Actually, I have two comments, but to Councilmember McCluskey's comment about coyotes, I think they hang out outside my driveway, so come on over and get them, please. And I think they look pretty hungry, so do what you will with that. On a more serious note, this evening we honored Deputy Dan Hacker for his years of service to the community. I wanted to make a couple of comments about him, and then also about Council Member Lorna Smith. And Madam Mayor, I don't think anyone could have said it more eloquent than you did about her, but I wanted to add just a couple of more words to that, if I might. Dan Hacker, as we all know, was a gentleman who joined our police force in the very beginning. And for residents that have moved to our community since then, it's really important to understand the contributions he made. Back when the city was incorporated, one of the things we really wanted as a community for our police force is to really be integrated into the community. And it reminded me of when I was a kid growing up in a town next door to us. When we got in trouble, we didn't go to our parents. We went to our police officers and our police chiefs. Now, they didn't run interference for us with our parents, but they always kind of set us straight. And it was a safe place to go. And so, we weren't so impressed about how many tickets officers wrote back then. We were more impressed with how many people the officers helped and really how they became integrated into the community. Dan really embraced that whole concept, and he took it to the next level. And so, with his departure, it will truly be felt throughout the community. I know my kids, having grown up here, they knew, and other kids knew, when they were in trouble, they could go to any of our officers, and they knew that would be a safe place for them to go. So, again, thanks to Dan for his years of service. With regards to Council Member Smith, I don't think I could top anything that the mayor has said about her. She was an amazing woman. But again, for newcomers to our community, it's really important to understand the legacies that are left behind, and certainly the legacy that Lorna left behind as a member of our community. And it's interesting, it's kind of timely since this is the month of the women. I think I said that right, or honoring women. But, she really was a woman of conviction. Although she was this kind of gentle woman with her silver hair and very soft-spoken, she stood very firmly on her principles and her priorities. And her priorities really were God, family, city, friends, and then, as we all knew, her political beliefs. But she never wavered. Whether we agreed with her or not, she never wavered from any of those. She really was one who could see both sides of an issue, always tried to balance, reach that compromise when we were all at odds or taking our positions. I certainly know when she became our mayor, there was some opposition on our council to her taking that position. She was aware of it, but yet she embraced even those folks. She showed kindness and fostered that collaboration and everything that she did throughout her tenure. I think the thing that she'll be remembered most for was, she was always one who stood up for those who she felt were being treated unkindly or unfairly. For those of us who participated, and I know several of you have, participated in serving Thanksgiving dinner to our seniors and the underserved populations and the vulnerable populations here in the city. Lorna was always there online along with her husband and her family, serving those meals, ensuring that people got fed. She wanted to ensure that the history of our city continued. She felt the past and how we got to where we are and where we're going in the 21st century was really important. She was one of the original members of our historical society in trying to build upon that history that we have. And I think as a city and a community, we have a proud history to look back on and to build on as we go forward. And she was a strong champion of our small businesses. She always was out there beating the drum for small business. I recall that some of the conversations we'd had at council with her when she would fight against some of the fees that she thought would burden or discourage small businesses from establishing in our city. In politics, for most of us who are there, we come to realize there's two types of individuals who run for public office. There's those who seek power to benefit themselves, and there's others who seek election to better their communities in the world they live in. Lorna really fell into that latter category. She never had any higher goals or aspirations to leap from. Her focus was really on her home university place. And so for me personally, I really have lost a friend and a colleague, with her passing. I was reading in a book written by a gentleman named Jose Harris, who wrote the book Mi Vida, if you haven't read that book. But he did write that, time has ceased, but cherished memories still linger. This is the way of life in all things. And in summary, that's Lorna. So with that, I will close. And again, thank you, Madam Mayor, for honoring her tonight.
Thank you, Councilmember Fleming. Lorna will definitely have big shoes for the rest of us to fill here. Mayor Pro Tem Worthington, any comments or quick report outs?
Thank you, Mayor Belisi. Yes, I do have some of each, and I'll try and be quick about it. First off, I wanted to start with some thanks and all. And one of those items was to also thank Deputy Hacker, who I think really has demonstrated to lived the role that we all look for in a dedicated deputy in our community, a police officer, really in any community. We're fortunate to have the services from our city's inception, and for him to give to the public for what I think looks like about 32 years of public service. That's quite a record, and I really do appreciate his efforts and work in that, and how he has helped to make UP what it is as well. I also wanted to talk briefly about before our regular council meeting, we had a finance committee meeting, and there was a report, as we do each quarter, about where we are in a variety of things. And the chair of that is Councilmember Pro Tem Lee. And then we also adopted that report in our consent agenda. There were a couple of things in that report that I think are worth noting, and I wanted to touch on one or two briefly. One of which is that our tax rate is now at 0.88 cents per thousand. It's the lowest actual rate that I believe the city has ever had. And with regards to property tax, it means that if for every dollar of tax that you in a university place pay for property taxes, less than 9 cents goes towards the city. The rest goes to other public sources or needs as determined by our citizens' votes and by the state rules and regulations. And so it's a small piece of your property taxes, but it's an important piece because we use that for public safety exclusively. And you've heard us talk about that this evening. I think the other thing I wanted to really thank folks for was excuse me for just a second. Any case, sorry for that interruption, but we have technical issues in a variety of ways this evening. The other thing I wanted to mention out of that report is that I wanted to thank our department directors, our city manager, and our staff. They've all worked hard. They were tasked with reducing expenses during COVID. Nobody knew what we were looking at. And Zutrex, the report that Councilmember McCluskey gave a little bit ago, kind of brought back memories. And it was that way for us too, just about a year ago. The city manager gave direction to reduce expenses, and staff responded and did. We saw the staff in this last year work roughly at reduced expenses, operated below their allocated budget by more than 16%. That was a safety zone, and that's a big effort. And I really appreciate every department coming in and doing that, and every employee that went to see that we were operating in a safe way financially. And I know the rest of council appreciates that as well. And the director is working very hard to keep the numbers where they need to be so that we wouldn't be exceeding our expenses and not knowing what revenues would be. As it turns out, things have balanced well for us, but no one knew that, and we were all cautious, and I appreciate that caution. That was important. And then finally, I just wanted to echo those heartfelt comments by Councilmember Fleming, by Mayor Bleasy about our colleague Lauren Smith, who passed away just recently, and Sunday, I believe, and how that the mark that she left in the city as its mayor at various stages and as a longtime council person, and she'll be missed in a lot of ways. Mayor, I think that concludes my reports. Thank you.
You're on mute, Mayor.
I would have to forget, wouldn't I? Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem Worthington. I just want to remind council that next Monday evening, we have a special meeting that is basically a study session that's going to be about the Open Meetings Public Acts rule. We're required annually to review it, so we're going to have an update from our attorney on that. We're going to be discussing the homeless issue that we did not get to at our retreat in January. And then we're going to also get a recap of where we need to go with the notes from the retreat that I sent to each of you in January. So mark your calendars. The meeting will start at 6:30 and go to our 9 o'clock or earlier if we get through those 3 items in that time period. With that, that's the end of our regular meeting. We're going to go into our study session. We have a follow-up from our last meeting. It's the second part. It's the South Sound Housing Affordability Partners discussion that we had. The SHAPE agreement. It was in your packet. Hopefully we can get some resolution to decide how we are going to proceed, if we're going to participate in the SHAPE program or take a back seat to it. So with that, I know that the agreement was in the packet. I'm not sure who on staff was going to help present our study session item. It's not noted here. And I know from listening to the tape last time, to the last meeting I missed, that there wasn't really any discussion about the agreement that we are being asked to consider by the SHAPE people. So was staff going to introduce the agreement at all?
I think I can take this on.
Okay, Mr. Swindell.
There is the South Sound Housing Affordability Partners has a range of potential benefits and area of opportunities for collaboration between member jurisdictions. First of all, a customized individual support. The agreement, maybe I should back up and go to a different slide here, but I can probably present in a second here, but let's go with, let me get this open here. Okay, so I'll go with this here. This is the frequently asked questions from December of 2020. It's in draft. Let me get this presented here. Nope, that's not it either. Excuse me. Here it is. Okay. So frequently asked questions regarding the South Sound Housing Action Partnership, affordability, attainable housing act, is who would participate. Members of the collaboration will be governments in Pierce County. I understand the tribe has also indicated a interest in participating. Members will decide what the annual work plan is based upon discussions. Each member would have one vote, and that would create each member would have one vote, and that would create a committee that would then create the work plan for the South Sound Housing Action Partnership. I'm sorry, I wasn't prepared to talk here, but they would, each city council would decide what part of the programs that they would like to participate in. So here it says, and then the funding would be fund 1.5 positions currently, staff positions. Let's see, this, I don't think this is what I meant to bring up.
Well, I can take over some, Mr.
Okay.
Swindell, too. I mean, I know
Yeah.
based on the discussion and presentation that we had from both Executive Bruce Danmeyer and Tacoma Mayor Woodards, as well as their John Howell, who has worked on this project. It's basically an effort to regionalize our approach to affordable housing and attainable housing in the area. It's still this project or this group has been meeting for a couple of years, but it's been in an informal setting. And at this time, they are looking to formalize this agreement to work together as a county to ensure that there's a resource available for jurisdictions when they're looking to possibly implement some affordable housing options in their community, to better understand what other jurisdictions are doing right or ideas that are spread out. So while I am not a fan of adding more governmental oversight, I'm finding this idea intriguing myself because of the fact that affordable housing is becoming more of a topic that's being discussed in the state legislature. It's being discussed at a federal level. And when it is discussed at those levels, it typically means that local jurisdictions are going to have additional requirements legislatively that are going to be imposed upon us. And my feeling as a council member and a citizen of the community is that this might provide us with a cheap alternative to hiring a staff member to oversee affordable housing options in our city and allow us an opportunity to have some resources available to us in being able to take, let's say we get a developer that wants to do some affordable housing but is having difficulty cobbling all the various funding mechanisms together to do it. This organization could potentially provide us with that resource for the developer without us having to use our staff time to do that as a way to entice the developer. It gives us also a legislative organization that can help potentially derail some negative legislation that might be coming from the county or from the state or even the federal government that might have a negative impact on our community, or that may be more costly to our community than what's currently out there. My feeling is, this is still in its infancy. So if you get on board early kind of thing, you are able to help shape the direction of this organization better than if we decide, 2-3 years down the road to jump on board. So these are just some of my feelings, partly because I have been involved in this organization on and off as my time has permitted to understand where this is going. I was real pleased to hear the robust conversation that council had at our last meeting. And so with that, let's get your thoughts out on the table. Do we want to proceed with this, or do we want to sit back and see what comes of this? Because I know the organization is definitely, or the group is definitely wanting to understand how much participation they can expect from a local jurisdictional standpoint so that they are able to move this forward. Councilmember McCluskey, your thoughts.
Okay, thank you. I do agree that if we're not on board here, that this could have a potential of being another government oversight, and I would like to have a voice at the table shaping this direction. I also like the idea that it's a volunteer, and I would like that to be underlined, bolded, that issues that are decided and determined is not mandated down to the city of University Place, that we have a choice. I think the PCRC and the PSCRC does enough mandating under the Growth Management Act. As other agencies come in, they report, and they really don't want our comments or our opinions, and we have to follow the rules and abide by them. I don't want that to be another agency oversight. And that is kind of my initial fear. And so I would like, but it is in the contract that this is a voluntarily designed component. The housing crisis is a real need, and I would like to glean any expertise that I can. And I was just kind of looking at some of the numbers. So if everyone would participate, then the numbers would come in, because everyone has to pay to play, right, at the table. You know, you can't just go in there and have a seat for free. And so if you pay to play, and everyone does, that they hopefully will get at the table, it'll be the 128,000. Then looking at the salaries of the first year, you're at 154K. The second year is really interesting, because then you add a staff member, and that puts it up to 227,026. So 2 people create the bulk of the expenses that all the cities collectively have put in to maintain it. So my concern is that when the group meets, is that we need to be really constructive and also allow what is the benefit if we're at the table, because I'm interested in providing a consultant aspect to the city as we march along with our own codes and rules and planning for affordable housing and diverse housing options and choices. We already paid for several consultants along the way during my tenure on the city council, as how is that going to augment and complement that? And I would like to not have to say, well, we would need a consultant because the city is considering this, and will be echoed back, well, that either is not what the staff does, because they don't have the time to do it. They need more staff, which means they need more money. And secondly, how much of that staff time does each city really get at the end of the day for their $13,000 initially a year for this? So I'm looking at, well, what is I understand the conversation at the table. You know, I understand that PCRC also has this in their Growth Management Act that's coming out. So what is the cost benefit analysis of being part of that, and gleaning the consultant to help us augment our journey on to designing affordable housing within our community.
Okay.
I don't think anyone knows the answer to that at this point in time, because it's not really designed out. Because as I read the information, it's like, to me, like Play-Doh. We can design it as we want. And so that's my concern, because I want to play with the Play-Doh, but I want a piece of the Play-Doh to take back to my city, that I could tell my citizens, hey, it was worth being in this group to shape the shape of our housing in our city. So with that, I'll listen to the other comments, but that's kind of my thoughts. I like a lot of things that were going on and how that was evolving and designing and the projection of the group. But at the end of the day, I always kind of gravitate to, okay, well, we like to play on different committees, we like to glean different ideas, but it has to be worth it for our time and effort. And also, if we're going to align our staff to help shape the shape, because that's what's going to happen, I want us to, if we pay to play, to get the greater benefit of it all. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Figueroa, then Mayor Pro Tem Worthington.
Thank you, Mayor. Councilmember Figueroa here. Well, some of this is a repeat of Councilmembers McCluskey, but I wanted to emphasize some of those points, and that is one is the staffing. Let's not be blind to the one staff member and maybe 1.5 staff members down the line that's going to serve so many governments and so many different personalities and opinions and agendas about how to do with housing. We all realize that the housing conversation is not new. This is an old conversation that even we have advisors over advisors, committees over committees, councils over councils that have not been able to really figure it out because there isn't any. It's all about the cost of doing business that's sometimes out of our domain, other than our own ordinances and zoning that helps that. And we're doing a very good job of that, I believe. But there's no way that I can see that one staff member is going to be able to service so many people, and especially not only service in the hierarchy. Okay, well, the big donors, the big contributors, are they going to have when they call, and I'm the executive director or the staff member, and the mayor of Tacoma calls versus a little city of DuPont or whatever the little city is, or UP, who are they going to listen to? County executive, who are they going to listen to? Is the big contributor that there's no way they're going to lose that account. At the end of the day, it becomes a governmental, agency for all, for all of the reasons that it's answering to government and government officials. And it's all about, once you start this machine, it's about keeping that machine. If you're the staff member, okay, it's about, you've got office space, equipment, travel, training, benefits. And once you start that, whoever is contributing to this effort is who they're going to really make sure that they're happy. And that being said, is I think that there's just way too many differences in affordable housing at different levels, at the different jurisdictions. And maybe the county, and maybe because of the size of footprint they have for housing, dilemmas and variables like Tacoma does, but I don't think that fits the bill for the smaller cities like University Place, DuPont, Silicon, because it's contained a lot more. And we have a smaller footprint, and I mean, we're almost built out. How many more developers are going to come in and do, we don't have that much land. We don't have that much room. And so what are we paying so that one or two developers can get some help? We might as well just get a consultant at that time. And to what end? The other one is the pressure to fall in, or we don't get hurt. I mean, when we're talking about someone that's contributing a lot more, and they can easily say, well, you fall in, or we're not going to, vote for your idea. We do that. That's just human nature. I don't believe in, and I really don't think that we are in the same mindset as other jurisdictions, especially Tacoma. And so I'm not ready to be pressured to fall in step in order to be heard. There's plenty of housing advisors out there, councils. I mean, there's just like tons, and then you have other areas of expertise. Puget Sound Regional Council, which gets into population and why are we growing? What we did the forms-based code to satisfy a lot of that for the Puget Sound Regional Council, which has to do with housing. So we already have a lot of that going on. You talked about legislation. We have AWC. We pay $25,000 a year, maybe even more, for legislative help. We should be asking them if we need any help. We don't need another site show on this whole issue. Then what's really perturbing too is, I've heard this saying, well, we'll get to create what is going to be done with this body. Well, I'll tell you one thing. I'm not going to get a loan from anybody and anyone to invest in my idea, and I have no idea. But you give me the money, and then I come up with the idea of how I'm going to act or do. I don't like that philosophy at all, not whatsoever. I think that to end my comments is that I'm not sold on this at all, and I'm not in favor of it for all the reasons that I just mentioned. And I think that this is not a one size fits all situation, not for the money and not for the staff time. We talk about we don't have staff for this or that. There's going to be staff dealing with this one other staff, and it's just layer after layer. I think that we should, if we need something for the one or two developers that come in once or twice a year or every other year, we just get a consultant and we figure it out. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Figueroa. We have Mayor Pro Tem Worthington, followed by Councilmember Keel and Councilmember Pro Tem Lee. Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you. Appreciate that, Mayor Bellisi, and Councilmember Figueroa. Thank you for your comments. And I think I've got a pretty clear idea where you are, which is always helpful. And on this particular one, we're probably going to be on little different sides of the table. But nonetheless, I think you had a number of valid points there. However, I guess maybe I'll build up to this point. A couple of things to keep in mind is we're in the midst of a housing plan ourselves in terms of housing in our comprehensive plan. We've got a number of initiatives that are being proposed with our current consultant group coming back to us here with the help of the Planning Commission's feedback in the next 4 or 5 months, maybe a little less than that actually. And the potential of having some feedback about how those different initiatives could work and fit our community one way or the other is, I think, going to be helpful for us. That's a rather specific piece. One of the reasons we're doing that, well, several reasons we're doing that housing plan. This is a very front burner topic in our communities and in our state, and actually here in UP. If you go back to our flash vote work that we did a year ago, about a year ago, in fact, only about 6 months ago, I reported out to you the top 3 points of interest were recreation, housing, and police. And I think they were in that order. I might have the order wrong. Housing might have been number 3, but frankly, housing affordability had a very strong turnout in our community in terms of the frequency of comments and the comments that were made about needs and how they perceive the quality of life for themselves and for the people that were in their community. it sounds to me like our citizens want interest, want action, want at least information on housing, and this is a way to get there. Then going back to last meeting, County Executive Dan Meyer, one of the things that he mentioned that I took note of and kind of took home with me, so to speak, was that in King County, they seem to have a good deal of luck raking in the funds to do projects from the legislature. Well, it might be because they're King County and there's a whole bunch of people there and they're politically networked and they know how to work well together and they have a number of committees and internal organizations that build that network. Now, Pierce County is a great group of folks, but as the county executive pointed out, we don't have quite that same network put in place on the issue of affordable housing. And it was one of the stronger points in my mind that I came out with was from his comments, was that this could help build that network and give us more political clout and effectiveness in getting funds from the legislature for affordable housing issues. That kind of rang a bell on my side of things. I know $13,000 today can be $15,000 in 2 years and whatever the numbers grow to be. And we all have to attend to that and see that those numbers make sense and we get a deliverable out of the deal, which is to say we get what we need, something of value for our citizens and community, something that is worth that kind of investment. But I also know if we're not at the table, if we're not there being part of that discussion, we aren't going to get anything. And my sense is the community wants to be engaged in this issue. And we're looking for ways to be engaged. Our plan is a great step, but we're going to come down to having to implement that plan and needing some ways to work through how best to do it. I think this could be a step to take us there. At the end of the day, I think it's better to be at the table than pushed back away from it. I think it's better to be engaged than it is to be, I think the old phrase used to be, you can either be at the table or on the menu. And in this particular case, I'd just as soon be at the table. And I think for the investment, there's some opportunity there for us. So that's just my view. Thank you. Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. Council Member Keo, followed by Council Member Pro Tem Lee.
All right. Thank you, Mayor. You know, I really wish my two colleagues that went before me didn't really beat around the bush and just told me exactly what they thought. Make it real clear, okay, what you're thinking. I wish we could have done that. But I think it's interesting that I follow both of them because I do, and jokingly, seriously, I do see where they're coming from, and my position is going to be, typically where I am, and that's, squarely in the middle, and that being, I do see both ends of the spectrum that they both talk about, and a lot of it I agree with 100%, and which leads me to my thought, and that is, I think this is a classic SWOT analysis type of deal that we as a city need to go through, and clearly I think we need to talk about what the benefits are, and first of all, what is it that we that we think we need to have in order for it to be successful, and then go and talk to the group and say, hey, here are the things we want. Here's how we want to engage with you. If it's the number of hours, if it's access, if it's how our staff is going to work with them, we lay all that out and we see if they can agree to. I mean, we are going to be signing an agreement with them, and I would advocate that we don't sign just the generic agreement that they have, but if there's things that we want in our agreement that we want to get out of it, that we write that into the agreement, and then we manage it, and we say, and then at the end of every year or period, we evaluate if we got what we wanted out of it, and if we did get out of it what we wanted, is that of value to the city and to our citizens? And it could be things that are non-monetary, like being at the table and not on the menu. those kinds of things. Is it better clout for us down in Olympia and at the federal level when it comes to things that our citizens want? So I see the value I see the hesitancy for not wanting to be there because of all those things. And I'm not one for wanting to have more bureaucracy, but I also see the value in it. And same thing with what Mayor Pro Tem was talking about. I see the value in the pitfalls and the things that he's saying. And so my suggestion is that we somehow kind of coalesce around, here it is what we're interested in doing, and even if here is what we're not interested in doing, and then we engage into a conversation with that group to see if we can get those things, and then see if it's cost benefit for us. That's my comment.
Thank you. Council Member Pro Tem Lee, followed by Council Member Fleming.
I'll make my comments brief. I assume that there's no associate memberships in this club, so I think we probably do need to be at the table. However, I concur with Councilmember Figueroa that it's a very diverse group of people that make up this group, and I don't know that our needs are going to be met. So I don't know how. I'm not sure what to say about it. But anyway, I sort of concur with Mayor Pro Tem Worthington that we need to be at the table and not on the menu. Thank you.
Thank you. Council Member Fleming.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And I hope my comments are not insightful, but certainly give us an opportunity just to think about things for a little bit. And while I have heard of it's great to be at the table and not on the menu, I'm the kind of guy who says I like to write the menu, period, on that one. I sometimes wonder when we debate issues if we are truly listening to what we're saying when we do that. And what I mean by that is we just spent the last 3 hours talking about housing in University Place and debating the merits of approving a program that would allow for more development. And we heard from our city staff saying, after this development, there's not a lot of property left to develop. And so, unlike other areas in Pierce County, University Place has a very defined area left for us to develop within our 8 square miles that we have. When I first joined the council, as Mayor Pro Tem Worthington said, one of the top things people were talking about back then was affordable housing. And certainly as a city and as a council, we can't ignore that we need to look at how do we integrate affordable housing into our community that is rapidly becoming unaffordable for many citizens. So it's important that we keep this conversation open and we keep it going as we move forward. To the mayor's comment, is this an intriguing concept? Absolutely. And is certainly one that deserves more conversation and more explanation. But when we talk about having a voice at the table, I think it's important that we keep in mind we are not the big dog on the block here. When we incorporated the city, we were at the time the second largest city in Pierce County. We are now, I believe, the 4th largest city in Pierce County. And the point I'm making is that while we think we might have that place at the table, I think we've seen in some recent conversations where we've been lumped into the small cities, and so we kind of rotate our position at the table. We don't have that place at the table. So we shouldn't get too I don't want to use the term delusional, but we shouldn't get too excited about the fact that we will have that opportunity to be there. You know, I have concerns about creating another level of bureaucracy under the guise that we are going to do great things because affordable housing is a hot topic. And so we kind of wrap this in a package that looks really pretty for everyone to be able to buy into. But if you listen to the presentation that we had, and I think someone had made the comment about the devil is in the details, and I think it's true with this particular proposal. That reminded me back when I was at the county, how we used to look upon the cities as, well, the county knows best for the cities. You think you do, and you think you know what you want, but you don't. You know, so that was kind of the prevailing attitude there. So you have a program in which you have big county and big city making a proposal to bring all the small cities into this collaborative table, and your cost is you're going to pay for a staffer who's going to come back and help us make decisions on affordable housing. We need to be very realistic about that. It's not going to happen. You know, I can give you examples after examples on regional councils and regional organizations where we have contributed for that. And in the end, that staff person is responsive to whoever's their supervisor is. And if you recall in the presentation that we had, while you have this collaborative body, it's the executive board or the executive committee that's going to make the decisions. They're the ones who are going to guide the ship. They're going to set the priorities, and then they're going to impart those to the rest of the collaboration in terms of how that's going to unfold. So, you know, it's important to realize it's a great idea. It's a great concept, but we also have to realize who's going to be calling the shots at the end of the day. You know, someone made the comment about, well, we need to have someone who can help guide this when it comes to making sure we don't get railroaded by the state or by the county. You know, think about that for a moment. You know, we have electeds that represent our city at the state. We have electeds that represent our city at the county. And if we're not engaged with those electeds to make known what our concerns, our issues, our priorities are, then that's a shame on us for not having done so. You know, we need to have that lines of communication that are established. You know, when we talk about eventually, you know, if we're not there, we're not going to be part of the solution, and you know, we may not get some of the money. I will tell you just from experience, money is cocaine to councils. It doesn't matter who they are. You know, and what I mean by that is I'll give you a little bit now to entice you, and I'm going to hook you, because eventually I will give you more money if you do as I tell you to do, and you will do it. So it's important that as a council, we maintain the wisdom of the masses here and really look at what is best for the city in the big picture, not what we're going to get if we join this. We might get a morsel over here on the side. I had to draw a big smiley face when Councilmember Keel was making his comments, because sometimes I'm like, I'm not quite sure I'm on board with Camp, but this one, I think he hit the nail on the head when he said we need to sit down and do a SWOT analysis and really take a deep dive into what are the risk and the benefits and the opportunities and the threats for the city, and then based on that, and make it a good one. Don't blind ourselves to what we think we want to see. Let's have a very raw conversation in terms of what will the city get out of this deal if we were to do it. I would love to see a collaboration where there's no money, there's no one person in power. You sit around the table and you hammer out things that on a global, regional is going to benefit us. But I just don't see that happening here. But I do think.
Excuse me, Councilmember Fleming, we're running out of time. I got
1 second. I got 1 second left here.
Okay.
So, you know, so in the end, really, it's, I think we do need to take the step back. We do need to do the SWOT analysis. We do need to really look at what we have in our city, what we need in our city, and how will that plug into the rest of the region, and then go forward from there. So that's my thoughts in a nutshell, and I'm done, Madam Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you so much. At this time, I have an extension till 9:30. It sounds like we've got some robust conversation going on here.
Mayor Belisi, Mayor Pro Tem Worthington, I move to extend the meeting until 9:30.
Do I have a second?
Councilmember Keel, I second.
Okay. All in favor, raise your hand. Aye. Yep. Okay, passes unanimously. With that, Councilmember Figueroa, you raised your hand again. Do you have additional comments?
Yes, Mayor, thank you. Really appreciate it. I dare any one of us hand over $13,000 to any organization, any company, or any individual on a contract like this, on this type of an agreement that's really vague, is not giving us any real answer as to how we're going to be treated. You wouldn't do it. We have, I'm not sure why we don't leverage what the county already has. There is a towns and cities committee that meets with the county executive in charge. The towns and cities means the mayor of or city of Tacoma. Why this vehicle, for better words, this can't be used to start this whole and initiate this whole thing? Why do we have to start with pumping out more money and establishing a whole process here? There's unanswered questions why that can't be used. That particular process can't be used. I've been to those towns and cities committee when I was mayor, and it was lacking substance of why we're even meeting. If this is this important, that is certainly a heck of a great substance to bring everybody together and do exactly what Stan was saying and Ken was saying, hey, let's really kick this around and see exactly how everybody gets treated equally on housing and who needs it and what are their needs and so forth. Why do we have to everybody started putting money for a staff person? The other one is that, I talked about, somebody mentioned about King County. Well, sorry, all due respect, Steve, Councilman Worthington, I really respect you, but I wouldn't really put a lot of emphasis on following King County's coordinated effort of housing, because it's sleepless in Seattle. Okay, it really is. There's a crisis, even with all the coordinated efforts. Look at the homelessness. Look at the ordinances of campers being able to, camp anywhere they want. RVs on streets. So their coordinated effort really didn't do much. If this is a way of coordinated effort, that's not my example I want to use. I'm certainly not looking at them for any example of what coordinated effort is. So again, I love coordinating and playing with other people, but this doesn't make sense. We're not, the shoe doesn't fit for everybody here. And if we think we do, it needs to be explored way before we just pump out some money and saying we're part of this and be part of an executive committee that who knows is really going to be in charge. Because we know when you do that, that's the people that's pulling the strings. And you better believe it's going to be the county and the city of Tacoma at those positions. Guarantee you. So anyway, those are my last comments for now. I do not want to be sleepless in Tacoma. Okay.
Mayor Pro Tem Worthington.
You bet. And I don't know, sleepless and maybe traumatized in Tacoma. That might be it. But so just to clarify and then to make a.
Did I make myself clear? No, just kidding.
Anyhow, just to clarify, then make a summary statement or move on from there. But what I was trying to do with reference to King County was to recapture something that County Executive Dan Meyer had said. And he had used King County as an example of a successful group going to the legislature. And so it was actually his reference, not mine. But I'm sure I didn't capture it accurately and certainly not nearly as effectively as he does. Regardless of that, yeah. Regardless of that, though, I think Councilmember Fleming's suggestion of a SWOT analysis, or perhaps it was Councilmember McCluskey or others, but that sounds like a great way to approach this, and just take a look at a little more methodical approach about how where our strengths and where our concerns and needs are, and with our housing study well underway, we should have a pretty good inventory or assessment of what we have on hand and what is in front of us, and put that to work. I'm afraid, though, that when I don't necessarily myself, just shifting gears slightly, I don't believe that any community, any place, at least the United States, is ever fully built out. It just doesn't happen. What we heard staff talk about earlier tonight was that in that target area, there wasn't any near-term projects that could have a footprint of 24,000 feet, which is required for that particular thing we were speaking of. There are opportunity properties there, but it wasn't about that thing, to meet the standard that was been adopted or proposed and now adopted for our tax abatement. But there are, other places. We go to Seattle, and you would think Seattle's built out, but they keep squeezing them in and making it happen. And going through redevelopment as economic opportunities come up. So, it never quite ends. It's always another way to do it. It seems, even though at times it seems incomprehensible. But to the SWOT analysis, that sounds great, and I think that would be a nice next step. And we've all made some very strong points here, and I appreciate the benefit of hearing about it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. Councilmember Fleming.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I just wanted to make a point of clarification with the Mayor Pro Tem. You're right. No city is ever truly built out. The point I was making is not that we're looking for other space for 24,000 square foot buildings, but what we do have is we have multiple projects that are in the pipeline that the council hasn't even got visibility on, and this is per the city staff, that will take up the remaining open space we have. Now, once that is done, will we be looking at existing space and redefining that and repurposing it? That's the life of a city. It goes on in perpetuity to do that. But the point I was trying to make was we have a defined boundary to which we cannot extend beyond. And so as we move further into this 21st century, we just need to do it with some great wisdom and great foresight as we do so. That was it.
Okay, I'm guessing based on the conversation here that there really isn't a consensus on how we need to move forward, but rather the potential for some additional study session on this. Councilmember Keel, I see you raised your hand.
I did, Mayor, and just on your comment about how do we move forward, and my suggestion is to do that SWOT analysis, and what I would hope that staff can do is to start with those I keep saying 900, but it's only 90 opportunity properties that we have, and they did some really good work working with a tongue-in-cheek working with a consultant and with that work, what I was told is that we've got some tools now and some spreadsheets where we can kind of turn cranks and move data and information around to do some what ifs and then talk about tax and other kind of stuff into the city that could come in based on how these different 90 properties are redeveloped. And so I would encourage us to use that as a, to council members Figueroa and Fleming's point about how much we're built out and what we have in the pipeline and all that, that we use that as our kind of our limit, and we start talking about what might we do with these properties that could be done with these properties in light of our new codes that we have and stuff like that. And then once we have an idea of that, and then say to this group, hey, here's what we have, here's what we're looking at. Is this the stuff that you can help us with? And if they say yes, then we outline what our service level is going to be. Here for $13,000, this is what we're going to pay you $13,000 for. And then we line list what our service level, in my business, we do a lot of service level agreements. And we say, this is what we're going to pay you for, and this is what we want. And then we have them agree to that, and then we manage the contract going that way. And then there's some things in there that we get back if we don't get it and all that kind of stuff like that, so that it's really more of a balanced kind of a deal. And everybody's clear, if we decide to do this, everybody's clear what we're paying for and what we're getting. And if we don't get it, then some money comes back our way because it didn't meet threshold. So that's just a very high level kind of ballpark of what we could talk about. And if we go through that and we don't like it, then we don't have to do anything. But that's my suggestion.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember McCluskey.
Okay, thank you. Oh, well, one of the issues when we do a SWOT analysis, it will be more of an internal review of our housing choices and opportunities. What the SHAPE group is about, it hasn't shaped itself yet. So I don't think doing a SWOT analysis is really going to give us the answers that we need, because you talk about the menu of options. Does it provide us a sense of autonomy within the structure to use the group for our greater good, to shape our affordable housing? Or is it a what I call a set dinner, where you have the menu in front of you and you partake different dishes and glean from that, but there isn't a whole lot of sometimes choices within that set dinner that you've been invited to the table to. So I think that is the unknown that we're struggling with, is to what is SHAPE and what will it actually be the benefit of, because it hasn't molded itself yet.
Right.
But I do concur the first step would be the SWOT analysis, and to get that together and to design that with a map of a tangible map of opportunities of housing choices that establishes not only the housing choices and opportunities, but also the social inequities that we have built in the city, and how with our housing choices we can help redefine the city for a better lifestyle for all the residents within our city's borders. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember McCluskey. Councilmember Figueroa, I thought that your last comments were your last comments.
Well, I guess
He
not.
said for now.
That's why it's
He
a
said for
study
now.
session,
These are my
right?
last comments for now.
So thank you, Mayor. Mayor, the Tacoma Mayor and Executive Council Dan Meyer mentioned that when I think it was me that said, well, there's nothing there to really balance anything off in this committee. They said, well, you get to choose and create, and that's been really problematic for me. Councilmember Fleming mentioned I'd like to write the menu, I like that. And the SWOT analysis, I understand your viewpoint, Councilmember McCluskey, but I think that being proactive by doing the SWOT analysis and saying, this is okay, this is what we know, and this are some of the needs, whatever they might be, that we cannot get on our own. Like we're talking about legislatures, and I mentioned AWC, Councilmember Fleming mentioned we got three legislators. We've got 2 House representatives, we got a senator, and we have a Pierce County Council member that is supposed to be representing our city. And we need to leverage that. And we should leverage all of our resources before we create another body of government that we have to pay. And we have those resources. We have other resources for affordable housing advice, for better words. So I think that this SWOT analysis, if we go through it, it would be for the purpose of being proactive, and then coming to this group says, well, this is the needs that we cannot fill in with everything that resources that we can see before us and that's available to us. And this are the what we're going to be needing that we just cannot accomplish on our own. And how can you meet it? How can this group meet if we join it? And now we're creating the menu. Now we're saying, okay, now I feel better doing that, so that they say, yeah, this forum is exactly how we can meet those, and this is how we can meet them. Okay, but if they say no, there's no way, this is not the forum, I'd like to know that before I join and pay them $13,000 and then asking them for a refund. Are you kidding me? They're not going to give us a refund. Thank you very much, Mayor.
Thank you. Councilmember McCluskey.
I just want to go on a record to clarify what I just stated, just so there isn't any miscommunications. I am pro SWOT analysis. I am from that business model that SWOT analysis are a good tool to use, and what any growing business concerns must and need to do to keep it at a viable business, not only for the present moment, but into their future, if they want to sustain their viability and going through the different phases that businesses naturally do in their growth. So I don't want to have any misrepresentation of what my previous comments were. Do the SWOT analysis, yes.
Okay.
Okay, it sounds like we still are all over the board on this and may need to have an additional study session, SWOT analysis, whatever. Mayor Pro Tem and I will take it under advisement and review with staff how this can be accomplished at our next agenda setting meeting, which is following our next study session on the 29th of this month. I do know that the SHAPE group is interested in a timely response so that they know how to move forward on this initiative. So we will look to see what can be accomplished to get it on a future meeting sooner rather than later. And just as a reminder, what's nice about this agreement is it's only a year-long agreement, so that you have an opportunity if we did choose to step on board to work through this initial phase to be able to retract our membership, so to speak, from this group.
Very hard to do, Mayor.
Yeah, but I understand. I wasn't done with my comments. Thank you, sir. But, I'm just saying that I do know from speaking to citizens and from the questionnaires that were sent out under flash vote that, affordable housing does not necessarily mean low income housing. It means that housing that is affordable to the majority of our citizens. And unfortunately, that affordability or that lost middle section of housing is one that we've had extreme difficulty in attracting and getting into our community. What's being built here is market rate and above. So, there are some advantages, and I have heard all of your guys' viewpoint, and I'm doing this number myself. I can be easily persuaded the way to move forward, but we need to understand also, as part of the SWOT analysis, what we have the potential of losing if we don't get in on a ground floor of something that's transpiring here. So if after this meeting, if any of you would like to have the executive or the Mayor Woodards to come back to ask additional questions, or if you think it would be helpful to have them at our next study session, please let me know. If you have any additional questions or areas of emphasis that you would like us to look at when we do the SWOT analysis, again, let the Mayor Pro Tem and myself know via email so that we can make sure that this session we have, is worthwhile and will actually lead us to making a decision rather than coming up with some new ideas and further kicking the can down the road, as they say. So there is some reason to come to a conclusion on this one way or the other. So we allow the SHAPE project to move forward with or without us, because they are waiting to see how many jurisdictions they can get on board with this so that they can plan their future also. So with that, if there are no additional comments or questions at this time, we are yes, Councilmember Figueroa, always.
Well, because this is really important, as you can see to me, that our city goes in the right direction. I'm going to be gone April the 5th. Or no, I think it's our first April meeting. And I won't be here. So if we cannot schedule it then, it will be my preference.
Okay.
I want to be present at this next discussion.
I would want all council members to be present for this. It's an important enough decision that we should all be weighing in on this.
Thank you.
Yeah. So thank you for letting us know. I know Emmy has noted it, so when we do the agenda setting, we'll take that into account. Okay, if there are no additional comments or questions, you have our email addresses for Mayor Pro Tem and I do encourage you to give us some feedback and direction on how you would like to proceed and what things you would like us to cover during that next study session. So with that, I am going to adjourn this meeting. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Bye.